So we are selling our entire Nubian goat herd after being in goats for 4 years. And it's a tough choice, but I think it's the right one, and I'm going to tell you why. And if you are thinking about getting goats, some things you should maybe consider before you decide to make that choice. I'm Kelsey from RoughAndTumbleFarmhouse.com, where every single week I share stories about farming, family, and fortitude here on our 5-acre homestead in northern Minnesota. So already we have Jersey cows and we have Nubian goats, and we got into goats pretty much right away. I like both goats and cows. I'm just an animal lover in general, and my husband really liked the idea of goats, so we started off with goats. We started out just kind of with whatever was available around here, and eventually decided we wanted to move into just registered stock. And then from there, we ended up choosing Nubians as being the goat we wanted to go with. But here I find myself now a little bit further ahead in our homestead journey and really having to make some tough choices about what we are going to focus our attention on, and being realistic about how much time I really have to devote, and deciding also that we want to move forward with having a sort of a homestead creamery, and hopefully moving into having an actually certified creamery. We can be selling items to the public, both pasteurized and potentially non-pasteurized, and really deciding which animal that was going to be that we chose to focus on. And cows won out. Cows had my heart anyway, and it was just kind of the thing where it takes the heart longer to accept what the mind already knows. And so we decided finally to pull the trigger and sell our goats. The main catalyst that kind of helped me decide that goats were the animal we were going to sell is the fact that goats are each their own little individual. And I know that that sounds kind of obvious, but if you have a small goat herd, to get even close to the same amount of milk that you're going to be getting from a Jersey cow or something similar, you're going to need several goats. And so right now we have 4 does, 1 wether, several wether kids, and we also have 3 bucks, because we had planned, if you watched my channel before, kind of in my plans for the summer video, I talked about how we were going to be adding in Nigerian dwarfs to breed from mini Nubians. So we did actually add those Nigerians before we came to this decision kind of late this summer. So we do have 3 bucks. So not counting the kids, because those are just going to be eaten at this point. we have 4 does, 1 wether, and 1 buck. So we have basically 6 goats that are my Nubians. You may have 1 goat who maybe needs some extra feed. You may have 1 goat who has a worm issue. You may have 1 goat that is escaping all the time. You may have 1 goat, there's just, each goat is its own little individual that has different nutritional needs and care needs and attention needs and personality needs. And so that can take just a lot of time and resources to make sure that each goat is getting the attention and care that it needs, versus I have just 2 cows, so that's only 2 personalities, 2 individuals who need attention. So hopefully that makes sense. I know it's kind of an obscure thing, but that's something that I really noticed this year, is that trying to keep up with all the goats when our wether was getting a little skinny, having the time to get him separated out from everybody else and getting him the feed that he needs, that took a little bit extra doing. Then we had another goat who was starting to have a scur come up, so we were having to fix that. Just all sorts of little things like that that need attention. Another thing about goats is having to sell all the babies. So with cows, you typically are just going to have 1 calf every year. It doesn't take a lot of effort to find a new place for that animal to go. With goats, you end up with anywhere between 1, and the breeds you have 3, 4, I've seen 5 kids being born if you're doing, like a Nigerian dwarf or something similar. And that can be really difficult to make sure you have homes for all of those animals. Last year, I only had 1 buck to sell. I listed him for $400, and I sold him in about 2 days. This year, I had 3 really good-looking bucklings. No interest, no market at all for any of those bucklings. So we just weathered them all, and a friend of ours is going to take them to raise up for meat. And that was a huge reason why we switched into doing registered stock. Not only can you make more money off of them, but there's also the hope that you can sell more animals as breeding stock. But this year, the market just wasn't there, and so they are just all going to be eaten. And they're beautiful, really good looking, 2 wethers right now and 1 buckling still. But that's just kind of the reality of it. Additionally, having to sell that many animals, I don't know about you, but I hate having to deal with people on like Craigslist and Facebook Swap and Shop and all those places. It's one of the things that like reduces my faith in humanity, because people are they say they're gonna come and then they don't show up, or you message back and forth with them for 3 days and they suddenly decide they're not interested. So you put all this time into talking with people for potential sales, and it falls through. And again, if you just have like 1 calf that you're trying to place, or 1 heifer or something that you're looking for a home for, that's not as big of a deal as if you have 8 kids that you're trying to find homes for. That takes a lot of time and resources to make sure you're getting them all to the right places. Another thing that I found to be a little bit of an issue, or kind of like a negative mark on the goats, is herd testing. So we had our herd tested about a year and a half ago, January 2021, and tested negative for CAE and CL, and that's already too old, too far gone, and so we have to have the whole herd tested again for CAE, CL, and we're also going to test for Yonis this time before we can sell them. And so the cost of doing the tests, it's about $50 just for the vet to come out, and you can send the test in yourself, but I like to have the vet do it just so that way you have kind of a third party that certifies, yes, these are real test results, yes, I came out and did the testing, because crazy enough, there are people out there who forge test documents. So I like to have the vet come out, and plus it's just less, it's easier just to have him be responsible for taking the test and sending it out and that sort of thing. So the cost of testing your goats, if you're testing annually, people want the whole herd tested, not just individual goats. So just for 6 goats, for those 3 tests, plus the vet coming out, we're looking at well over a $300 bill just for testing. And my goats are listed for, and I've had a lot of interest in people buying them for about $400 a pop. So essentially the sale of one goat is going to have to cover all the testing costs. Another thing with goats that was part of the deciding factor was fencing. Now, I do have another video out there about dairy goats and dairy cows and how you can decide which one might be right for you. And I did talk about this a little bit, but as my workload is pretty heavy. I've got 2 little ones I'm looking after, my entire house, my entire homestead. I work part-time. I have the blog and everything. So my time is very, very valuable. And with fencing, we do rotational grazing, and we fence a lot of kind of odd areas around the farm too. We fence the ditches around the swamp between us and the soybean field, like all that kind of stuff. And so we do a lot of temporary movable fence. And for the goats, they will stay in on 3 strands of electric hot wire. Now the cows will stay in on 1 strand of electric hot wire. So when it's been a really long day, where I've been, already up milking, taking care of kids, getting all the meals made, get everybody, fed and bed, maybe have to do a little bit of my desk job for a bit, and then I'm going out and moving fence at the end of the day. If I'm fencing an area for just cows, I go and pull up all my stakes. Well, I go out, reel up all my reels, pull up all my stakes, and go set up in the next spot. So you put your stakes in, and then you take your reel and you go down once. If it's cows, that's it. You're done. But since it's goats, you go down once, and then you come back, and then you go down again. It doesn't sound like a lot, but over the course of a summer, when you are moving fence every day to 2 days, that is a lot of time going back and forth and back and forth. And especially when, like I said, we're fencing some funky areas that are sometimes hard to get through, having to fight your way through bramble and swamp and everything else 3 times through the same spot. It's a lot. So that's one thing I'm really looking forward to, is when I'm setting up temporary fencing, it's going to go much, much quicker. Initially, just fencing in general is more expensive and complicated with goats to make sure they're staying in. We've had really good luck so far with them staying in, because we just refenced our whole back pasture last year. We do have one gate that's still really sketchy, and so we were gone overnight, and I came back, and a friend had come out and checked on everybody. And when we came back, though, I went out to go do chores, and the whole herd of goats was just in the yard there to greet me, which was very nice, but also okay, where did you guys get out? And it was because they had access to the back part of the pasture that I had saved for them to graze while we were gone. And we have kind of a sketchier fence, or a sketchier gate situation, and of course they had wheedled their way out and through. It's of course you did. Another thing with goats is the hooves. Goat hooves really need pretty frequent maintenance. It might be every other month. We typically do not stay on top of the hooves as well as that, even though I would really like to. So that's something you need to be aware of, is just the general maintenance of their feet. My one Jersey cow, she's going to be 7 next year. She has never once had her hooves taken care of, and her feet look awesome. Versus the goats, that's one more maintenance thing that you have to do very frequently. Additionally, goats in general are just not as easy keepers as cows, I have found. It might depend on the sort of cow you have or the individual cow, but our goats definitely have more health concern issues, that sort of a thing, that need to be dealt with. Goats in general too tend to have a few more health issues, or just are a little more frail than cows. I have, I'm gonna knock on some wood here, haven't had to have a vet come out at all for cow health issues, but I have had all sorts of issues with goats in the past, just varying from all sorts of things. I had one buck who was he had just sort of a compromised immune system, because he had 4 or 5 different things wrong with him over the course of one summer, while all the other goats were perfectly healthy. I've never had to worm my cows, but I've had goats that have gotten wormy. The cows just keep on better winter condition than the goats do. They're just a little trickier to keep warm. They'll be shivering sooner, which I always feel guilty about. So they're just not as easy keepers as cows. And so because of all those factors, we have decided that we will be selling our Nubian goat herds. Our Nigerian dwarves we are not selling, surprisingly, because my husband wants to keep them as pets. So I am washing my hands of the goats in general. I am a cowgirl now, nothing but cows, because that's pretty much all I can manage at this point. So thank you so much for watching. Hope this was helpful and just gave you some things to think about if you were considering getting goats, because those are real things that just make the goats not worth it for our family right now. Even though as individuals, I love our goats. They each are their own little, not person, their own little goat with their own little goatonality. And I do love them as individuals, but as a whole group, they're just not something that makes sense for us and our family at this point in time. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you next week for more farming, family food, and fortitude here at our Rough and Tumble farmhouse.